What's up, folks? I'm Private Hudson, and this is Half Away, a game that's half away from being good. This is an indie title out of Italy. It started out as a school project and eventually grew into a full game. It's short, about 2.5 hours, but at $7, that's a fair price for the length. The problem is what it actually does with that time. Now, I don't want to come down too hard on it because there's clearly passion here. There's talent too. The visual style is simple but colorful, and it actually reminded me a bit of Okami for the PS2. The soundtrack is solid as well, especially during the final sequence. But Half Away leans heavily on its story, and that's where things start to fall apart because the English translation is rough, full of spelling and grammatical errors that show up constantly. You play as Juna, a little girl who wakes up in a strange world filled with spirits inspired by Slavic and Japanese mythologies. The goal is to find your way back home to your family, but you're also warned that your brother is in danger. So now you're trying to solve both problems at once. The game constantly dumps lore on you. You use an ability called Resonance to scan objects, which unlocks journal entries. The issue is, navigating this journal is clunky. You can only go up and down, not side to side, and for whatever reason, the controller just doesn't work on the second page. And then there's the dialogue. You'll get lines like, "Prove me this is limbo," instead of, "Prove to me that this is limbo." And it's like that in almost every conversation. Oddly enough, the journal entries themselves are translated much better, but because they're basically lore dumps, trying to connect the journal entries with the story that's told in the dialogue is kind of impossible. And then you get to the puzzles. At first they're simple. You use Resonance to scan objects and match musical notes. Nothing special, but it works. And then you hit a section of the game called The Nest. This puzzle has you following an invisible figure's footsteps, because if you don't, the screen shakes, the ground swallows you, and spits you back out to the beginning of the area. Sounds fairly straightforward, right? Well, no, it isn't, because I spent 30 minutes here. Halfway through, the footsteps just stopped appearing. I had to restart the sequence over and over and over again until the footsteps randomly started to work again. On top of that, the area is full of visual glitches. Objects pop in and out constantly and for no reason whatsoever. The next section has you collecting 3 invisible figures or fishes or whatever in water. I had no idea what I was doing. I just brute forced it through trial and error and got through it eventually. The solutions aren't clear. The hint system doesn't help. And it gets bad enough that the developers actually made a Steam post explaining how the puzzles are supposed to work. I almost quit during The Nest. That's how frustrating it got. But I think that's more due to the bugginess than design, even though the design itself isn't good at all. There's also a couple of other smaller issues, but they add up. The game mixes a bunch of different visual styles without much cohesion. It's 3D, the world is 3D, but the dialogue has 2D portraits, and the cutscenes are low resolution, poorly animated, pixelated. It just doesn't work. And then there's the performance side. There's no VSync, so the game runs at over 600 FPS in the menu and over 200 in the game. And that's just wasted GPU power. It's not recognized in the NVIDIA app, but I don't know whose fault that is. I don't care, honestly, but I had to force a global frame rate cap in the NVIDIA settings just to keep things a bit under control. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a kind of minor thing that should have been in the options menu. So yeah, it's a story-heavy game with a weak translation, and a puzzle-heavy game with uninteresting puzzles. I like the visuals, I like the music, but the gameplay just isn't enjoyable. I do appreciate the developers giving me a key for review, and I'd be interested in seeing what they do next. I think with a little more refinement and more experience under their belt, along with better English translators, they can pull something off good. I'm Private Hudson. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.